Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。Often, the most vehement anti-China journalists and activists in the West are of Chinese descent. That was a comment on Twitter after anti-Chinese reporters came out in force following the sudden popularity of Chinese social media app 小红书 yesterday, with so-called journalist Melissa Chen using the anti-Chinese slur 青虫 to describe the app. A little digging found that she's used that slur very often, once referring to herself as 青虫 Barbie. But it gets worse. She said she's not against using even worse anti-China terms, and that context matters. I wonder if she feels context matters for Asian women randomly beaten to death by strangers on the streets of New York. Today, I'll take a closer look at the phenomenon of Chinese reporters in the US embracing anti-Chinese racism. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. I've covered numerous anti-Chinese reporters in the US on this show, including CNN's former China correspondent Selena Wang, who, despite clearly wanting to promote anti-China propaganda, at least never resorted to using racist slurs about Chinese people. The same cannot be said for Singaporean Chinese activist and journalist Melissa Chen, who moved to the United States at the age of 17 and has lived there ever since. Now, after securing a gig as a reporter, she began her anti-China campaign. Recently, she's been against TikTok, calling it essentially Chinese spyware, and hopes it will be banned in the US. And it turns out that Chen, of Chinese descent, is a huge fan of anti-Chinese slurs. Yesterday, after news of Chinese app Xiaohongshu's popularity in the US hit the airwaves, she made this comment on Twitter. "Oh boy, is this a new Ching Chong spyware app?" Trust me, it gets much worse, but I'll get to that shortly. Twitter users were quick to jump on Chen for her anti-Chinese language. Daniel Dumbrill summed it up quite well. Often the most vehement anti-China journalists and activists in the West are of Chinese descent. Gordon Chang has openly admitted that he aspired to be more like his white American friends during his childhood. Melissa spent a considerable amount of time attempting to convince the public of the TikTok China threat narrative. However, she was taken aback when she observed that many people would rather directly download a full-on Chinese app than capitulate, especially as the efforts of folks like her seemed close to fruition. So much of her identity is invested in proving she isn't like those other Ching Chongs back in China, that in a moment of disappointment and vulnerability, she inadvertently used the derogatory term that most encapsulates her self-loathing and desperation directly. It might appear ironic that someone who continually dismissed the notion of anti-Asian hate crimes as an imagined issue has now adopted the rhetoric of those who perpetuate such crimes. However, when you consider the full context, it makes complete sense. Now, what Daniel is talking about there, of course, is Chen's use of the anti-Chinese slur, Ching Chong. Now, in case that slur is new to you, and I hope it is, it's basically a Western way of bullying Chinese people, or Asians in general, and it aims to crudely imitate the sound of the Chinese language. It turns out that not only is Chen keen on using that term, she also advocates for its usage. Can you believe it? As Daniel mentioned, she plays down the existence of anti-Asian hate crimes in the US, failing to support victims like the many Asian men and women who have been randomly bashed and even murdered by strangers on the streets in the United States, and instead chooses to advocate for the continued usage of anti-Chinese slurs. Early last year, she mocked the fact that TV comedian Stephen Colbert got in trouble for using the term in a skit. She lamented that after being told not to use that term, he hasn't been funny since. Also last year, Chen referred to herself as Ching Chong Barbie. But it gets worse because there's a scale of anti-China slurs which is used in the West, with Ching Chong, while still extremely negative, actually being quite a tame example compared to another term that Chen is quite fond of. This term is so derogatory that I'm not even going to say it. In fact, I'll just put the slur in question on screen now. Now, this is bad, honestly. Using this word is like using another C word to describe women. It is that bad. But in 2022, Chen argued that usage of that term is completely okay, depending on the context. In speaking of its usage, she said, "Context matters, intent matters." That same year, Asian American woman Melissa Goh was randomly pushed in front of a train in New York. She died, of course. Another Asian woman, Guiying Ma, died from injuries after being struck repeatedly in the head with a rock in Queens, New York in 2021. Just terrible. So why is it that Chinese women working in media in the US seem to be more anti-Chinese than anyone else? Well, like Daniel Dumbrell said, often the most vehement anti-China journalists and activists in the West are of Chinese descent. Is it because they're going above and beyond to show their fellow Americans that they're part of the team, that they can be just as anti-Chinese as anyone else? In some cases, even more so? Is it a safety mechanism, a way to shield themselves from the inevitable anti-Asian sentiments they might run into living in the United States? Or is it worse? Is it just a way for them to make money? Is it worth noting that both Melissa Chen and Selena Wang are married to white men? Well, these are genuine questions, you guys, because I truly don't know the answer. I think probably from the outside looking in that it could be a mixture of all of the above, but what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please do let me know down below. And on that note, that will be it for today, you guys. But please remember to hit like and to subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.